allies agreed with us, but they don't want to, despite the fact that we help them so much. We have thousands of soldiers in different countries all over the world, and they don't want to help us, which is amazing. I mean, amazing. And I didn't do a full court press because I think if I did, they probably would be. But we don't need help. That war has been long prosecuted, as far as I'm concerned, almost from day one. We knocked out many of these things. We knocked out the Navy essentially in a couple of days. But I was surprised to see that NATO, while they agree that it was a very important thing to do, they agree fully. Nobody said, oh, you shouldn't do it. I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there. All of the NATO allies agreed with.
So the president said something that a lot of us feel. We protect the world, so when we need help, our allies should show up. I mean, it sounds about right, but until you actually listen to what's being said, all right? Here's the thing. He said, we don't need them. This is wild. This is what we have going on today. Let's introduce the president again.
Of NATO. We were going to protect them, but I always said when in need, they won't protect us. Now, this is in need. Need would be one of the big boys, but I will say that we built the greatest military in the world, and we protect people. And if we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us, because we've helped them for years stay out of wars. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can you tell us if you have spoken with French President Macron about the coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? Have you been speaking with the French president?
What does that mean?
Have you been speaking with the French President Macron about the coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, I have spoken to him. He's been on a scale of 0 to 10. I'd say he's been an 8. Not perfect.
See, right there is where we already know we have a petty president. He said, we built the greatest military, we protect people, and they should be jumping to help us. That right there, that's the emotional argument. We protect them, so they owe us. But countries don't move on gratitude. They move on interest and risk. That's the first disconnect that this president has. You pet my back, I'll pet your back. That's not how the world runs. Okay? That's not how the world looks at it. Let's continue. Watch this.
They won't be there. I was very surprised with the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom, 2 weeks ago, I said, why don't you send some ships over? And he really didn't want to do it. I said, you don't want to do it. We've been with you. You're our oldest ally. And we spend a lot of money on, NATO and all of these things to protect you. I mean, we're protecting them. We're working with them on Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away, separated by a vast ocean. We don't have to do that, but we did it. Well, Biden did it. I mean, I have to be honest with you. It's 3.
Biden did it. He didn't want to say that, but it's the truth. But he did also say that France has been an 8, not a 10. And that's great. Here's the thing. What kind of friend, what kind of ally have you been to other people? What kind of ally has this president been to other NATO countries? Let's continue.
And we don't need to work with them in Ukraine. And then they tell us that we have a mine ship around and they don't want to do it. I think it's terrible. No, I was very surprised. I told him, we requested 2 aircraft carriers, which they had, and he didn't really want to do it. And then right after the war essentially ended, meaning they were obliterated, he said, I would like to send the aircraft carriers. I said, I don't need them after the war has ended and won. I need it before the war. So I was very not upset. I was not happy with the UK. I think they'll be involved. Yeah, maybe. But
see, this is a president that takes these kind of things personal. He doesn't think in terms of strategic. We're in a global situation, he says, and we're rating allies like it's a performance review. That tells you something. This is not coordinated. This is testing people's loyalty. And he is seeing the people that are not being loyal. He's looking at the UK. He's looking at France. He's looking at other allies and saying, we called for your help, and then you're not going to come and help us. This is what he's looking at. And y'all know, most of you know, this president is petty as hell. So we got to see the fallout of what he does after this war.
The president saying, as you have been listening, that he has enlisted the help of NATO nations to aid in the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. So far, no concrete takers, but the president says that soon will change, then adding words to the effect of that the United States will not forget those who don't agree to what he is asking for.
See, I knew that was the case. I knew that would be the case. You can't say we don't need anybody and then turn around and ask people for help. Because we understand that they understand what you're saying. And when they hear that, when allies hear that, they step back. But see, that's not really what's going on. Now, this is the part that people are not explaining. NATO is not built for being the aggressor. NATO is a defensive alliance. They show up when somebody is being attacked. They show up when one of the allies are being attacked. They don't show up when you are the aggressor. Israel and United States are the aggressors. So therefore, they don't want to get involved. All of these allies do not want to get involved because you're attacking Iran. Iran sees itself as being by itself. That's why they have the chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, because they have no one to be in their corner. Now, if China and Russia stepped up to be in the corner of Iran, then we would be on the scale of World War III. So far, we have hesitated to be that far into it. NATO, if NATO joined, I'm pretty sure we would probably have China or we would probably have Russia in there too. Okay. But NATO is a defensive alliance. You don't call NATO to be the aggressor like the United States is an aggressor. I don't care what you say. Israel prompted United States into this war, and we got a goofy president, so he jumped right on in there with Israel. So now we're in a war that they thought was going to end within a week. When you thought you had an aggressor, when you thought you had a warring partner that was going to be cowering in the corner away from you. Iran is not cowering. Iran is being aggressive with what they're doing. So therefore, the whole world is seeing this. The world is saying that United States and Israel started a war. They are only defensive allies. They are not going to jump in. You call NATO and you call your allies when you're under attack. You don't call them when you're the person that is attacking. So when people say, why aren't our allies jumping in? You have to ask the allies. The allies are asking, jumping into what? Are we defending or are we escalating? Because if it looks like you're escalating, if the United States and Israel are escalating, they're going to hesitate. And they seem as though Israel and the United States are the aggressor. So this is how that NATO alliance is designed. See, that's why we know Donald Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. That's how we know Donald Trump doesn't understand the NATO alliance. Because if he understood it, he would know that it's a defensive mechanism. It only comes out when it's a defensive thing. So this isn't about betrayal, but you know what? We have a petty president, so that petty president is going to make it seem as though they're betraying him. They're going to say, oh, Donald, they didn't want to help me. They didn't want to help me. So, we ain't going to forget that y'all didn't want to help me. See, that's the way the president is going to play it. Like the allies abandoning him when he was in the middle of war. No, you started the war. You're the aggressor. When you're the aggressor, we don't jump behind you and be an aggressor too. Okay? This is about the uncertainty that Donald Trump and Israel have put upon the world. Okay? The allies don't know the plan. They don't know the end game. And they're not about to step into something they didn't help form or help shape. So every time the president said he's watching the reaction of the allies, he's watching the reaction of the allies, he's telling the truth. And here's the truth. The allies aren't failing a test. There's no test to give. They're making a calculation. Okay? And right now, they're not convinced that you have a reasonable clause to be over there fighting Iran. They don't believe you should be over there. A lot of them are saying that. Okay? So you started a war. You are the aggressor. You and Israel are the aggressor. NATO is just an alliance, a defensive alliance. So they're not jumping in. That's the hesitation. No, we're not sending our troops over there on no goofy mission. You guys don't have no end game. You guys didn't have no beginning game. You guys didn't have jack. So you guys go over there and fight that war. Do your thing. Do your thing. That's what all of our NATOs are saying, our allies are saying. Because there's no way that they're going to jump into something and they might be in a war for a very long time. Specifically because of that Strait of Hormuz. And Iran is playing that like a fiddle. See you in the next one.